So yesterday I just started randomly reading a book mid-book and I didn't give any introduction to it. It's actually called Last Girl by Nadia Murad, and it's super good. I started reading this. I bought this book a long time ago actually, and again, I'm a book crackhead and ADHD, so it takes me forever to finish one book just because I skip from book to book. Um, Not that there's a lack of intrigue. This book is really, really interesting and it's scary at times, especially for me and my brain. Um, but I wanted to kind of give y'all a little snippet of what this book was about, just in case y'all didn't have nothing to be, just in case y'all wanted to go and pick it up, y'all would actually know what it's about. Nadia Murad was born and raised in Kocho, a small village of farmers and shepherds in northern Iraq. A member of the Yazidi community when Nadia was just 21 years old, this life ended. Islamic State militants massacred the people of her village, executing men who refused to convert to Islam and women too old to be sold into slavery. Nadia was taken to Mosul and forced, along with thousands of other Yazidi girls, into ISIS slave trade. After being repeatedly raped and beaten, she managed a narrow escape from the streets of Mosul, finding shelter into the home of the Sunni Muslim family, whose eldest son risked his life to smuggle her to safety. Today, Nadia's story has forced the world to pay attention to an ongoing genocide, its call to action, a testament to the human will to survive, and a love letter to a lost country, a fragile community, and a family torn apart by war. So that's this book. And Amal Clooney actually wrote the foreword, and she wrote such a beautiful foreword. So I'm going to read that to you guys too. And here it goes. Nadia Nadia Murad is not just my client, she is my friend. When we were introduced in London, she asked if I would act as her lawyer. She explained that she would not be able to provide funds, that the case would likely be long and unsuccessful. But before you decide, she had said, hear my story. In 2014, ISIS attacked Nadia's village in Iraq, and her life as a 21-year-old student was shattered. She was forced to watch her mother and brothers be marched off to their deaths. And Nadia herself was traded from one ISIS fighter to another. She was forced to pray, forced to dress up and put makeup on in preparation for rape, and one night was brutally abused by a group of men until she was unconscious. She showed me her scars from cigarette burns and beatings, and she told me that throughout her ordeal, ISIS militants would call her dirty unbeliever and brag about conquering Yazidi women and wiping their religion from the earth. Nadia was one of thousands of Yazidis taken by ISIS and sold in markets on Facebook, sometimes for as little as $20. Nadia's mother was one of 80 older women who were executed and buried in unmarked graves. 6 of her brothers were among hundreds of men who were murdered in a single day. What Nadia was telling me about is genocide. A genocide doesn't happen by accident. You have to plan it. Before the genocide began, the ISIS Research and Fatwa Department studied the Yazidis and concluded that, as a Kurdish-speaking group that did not have a holy book, Yazidis were non-believers whose enslavement was a firmly established aspect of Sharia. This is why, according to ISIS warped mortality, Yazidis, unlike Christians, Shias, and others, can be systematically raped. Indeed, this was one of the most effective ways to destroy them. What followed What followed was the establishment of a bureaucracy of evil on an industrial scale. ISIS is even released a pamphlet entitled Questions and Answers on Taking Captives and Slaves. To provide more guidelines. Sorry, I lost my spot. Question: is it permissible to have intercourse with a female slave who has not reached puberty? Answer: it is permissible to have intercourse with a female slave who has not reached puberty if she is fit for intercourse. Question: is it permissible to sell a female captive? Answer: it is permissible to buy, sell, or gift a female captive, for they are merely property. When Nadia told me her story in London, it had been almost 2 years since ISIS genocide against Yazidis had begun. Thousands of Yazidi women and children were still held captive by ISIS, but no member of ISIS had been prosecuted in a court anywhere in the world for these crimes. Evidence was being lost or destroyed, and prospects for justice looked bleak. Of course, I took the case, and Nadia and I spent more than a year campaigning together for justice. We met repeatedly with Iraqi governments, United Nations representatives, members of the UN Security Council, and ISIS victims. I prepared reports, provided drafts and legal analysis, and gave speeches imploring the UN to act. Most of our interlocutors told us that it would be impossible. The Security Council had not taken action on international justice in years. But just as I write this forward, the UN Security Council has adopted a landmark resolution creating an investigation team will collect evidence of the crimes committed by ISIS in Iraq. This is a major victory for Nadia and all the victims of ISIS because it means the evidence will be preserved and that individual ISIS members can be put on trial. I sat next to Nadia in the Security Council when the resolution was adopted unanimously, and as we watched 15 hands go up, Nadia and I looked at each other and smiled. As a human rights lawyer, my job is often to be the voice of those who have been silenced, the journalists behind bars or the victims of war crimes fighting for their day in court. There is no doubt ISIS tried to silence Nadia when they kidnapped and enslaved her, raped her and tortured her, and killed several members of her family in a single day. But Nadia refused to be silenced. She has defied all the labels that life has given her: orphan, rape victim, slave, refugee. She has instead created new ones: survivor, Yazidi leader, women's advocate, Nobel Peace Prize nominee, United Nations Goodwill Ambassador, and now author. Over time, I have known her. Nadia has not only found her voice, she has become the voice of every Yazidi who is a victim of genocide, every woman that has been abused, every refugee who has been left behind. Those who thought that by their cruelty they could silence her were wrong. Nadia Murad's spirit is not broken, and her voice will not be muted. Instead, through this book, her voice is louder than ever. Amal Clooney.